The Stone Age was not egalitarian. The people who built the first monuments did not share power equally, and DNA just proved it. For over a century, archaeologists assumed early Neolithic societies were communal, small groups working together. No kings, no dynasties, just collective effort to survive and build. Then researchers sequenced DNA from a 5,000-year-old tomb in Scotland. What they found inside was not a community of equals. It was a family, a single male bloodline that controlled the tomb for over 500 years, across 12 to 15 generations. This was not primitive. This was dynasty. In 2024, Chris Fowler at Newcastle University published findings in Nature analyzing ancient DNA from Tomb 1 at home of Papa West Ray in Orkney, Scotland. 25 individuals, buried between 3600 and 3100 BCE. The tomb was not open to everyone. It was controlled by one patrilineal line, sons inherited from fathers, for over half a millennium. Every male buried in the primary chamber carried the same Y-chromosome lineage, not similar branches, the same direct line, passed down father to son without interruption for 12 to 15 generations. The women buried there married in from outside. Their mitochondrial DNA showed diversity, different maternal lineages, different origins. But the men? All descendants of a single founding male. This was not communal burial. This was ancestral inheritance, power passed through blood. The pattern repeats across Neolithic Europe. In 2018, southern Germany, elite corded-ware graves showed patrilineal kinship, sons buried near fathers, daughters absent after marriage. In 2021, French megaliths, related males buried together across multiple generations. In 2023, Ireland, one male lineage dominated a collective tomb for over 300 years. Same Y chromosome, same inherited control. Stone Age societies were not flat, they were stratified, and the stratification was genetic. But here's what makes the Scottish tomb different: the level of control. Over 500 years, 12 to 15 generations. That is longer than most European royal dynasties survived in recorded history. The individuals buried there were selected. Males from the patrilineal received primary burial in the central chamber. Their wives, women who married into the family, were buried alongside them. But not all wives, only some. Others were placed in secondary chambers or annexes. Physical separation within the tomb reflected social separation in life. Access to the tomb was hereditary, controlled, exclusive. The tomb itself was monumental, built from massive stone slabs, requiring coordinated labor from dozens, possibly hundreds of people. Orkney's limited fertile land and island geography may have intensified competition for territory. When space is finite and valuable, controlling burial rights becomes a way to claim legitimacy over land. Comparison to later periods is instructive. The Old Kingdom in Egypt's history lasted roughly 500 years. The Roman Empire in the West lasted 500 years. The Tang Dynasty in China lasted just under 300 years. A single family controlling a monumental tomb in Neolithic Scotland for 500 years is not primitive social organization. It is dynastic stability on a scale that rivals literate civilizations. But not every Neolithic society followed this patrilineal male-dominated pattern. In southern Anatolia, at the 9,000-year-old settlement of Çatalhöyük, one of the largest Neolithic sites ever found, the DNA tells a very different story. A 2025 study analyzing 131 skeletons found that individuals buried in communal graves beneath the same house often weren't genetically related. Those that were related tended to share maternal rather than paternal ancestry. This was a matrilocal society. Men moved in with their wives' families. Girls received 5 times more grave goods on average than boys. The researchers are careful not to call Çatalhöyük a matriarchy, but the pattern is unmistakable. Stone Age social structures were not uniform. Different regions, different cultures, different rules. So why did Northern Europe develop patrilineal dynasties while Anatolia developed matrilocal systems? Economics. In Çatalhöyük, people lived in dense, crowded settlements, up to 8,000 people packed into 34 acres. Property was limited. When space is scarce, keeping daughters at home while sending sons away may prevent subdivision of limited property. Matrilocality becomes a strategy to maintain household cohesion across generations. In Northern Europe, Neolithic farmers spread across a vast landscape. Pastoralism and land-based wealth may have favored patrilineal inheritance. Men who controlled herds and territory passed that control to their sons. Different environments, different solutions. The genetic data from Scotland also reveals something unexpected. The women buried in the tomb came from outside. Their mitochondrial DNA shows no shared maternal ancestry with each other or with earlier generations. Exogamy. The ruling males married women from other communities, likely through alliances. Remarkably, 2 women buried at home of Papa West Ray were more closely genetically related to men buried in the Caithness tombs than to any of the men buried alongside them in Orkney. These women may have played an active role in maintaining ties between communities on either side of the Pentland Firth. They were not passive objects of exchange. They were active agents in building political alliances. The female lineages cycled through. The male lineage remained. This is patrilocality. Women move to their husband's home. Men stay. The pattern is common in later agricultural societies. The DNA shows it existed 5,000 years ago. But not all males in the family line were buried in the tomb. Some may have been excluded. Younger sons, non-inheriting branches, individuals who lost status disputes. The 12 to 15 generations represent the males who maintained access. Others may have lived, descended from the same founder, but buried elsewhere. Power within the dynasty may not have been evenly distributed, even among relatives. In Ireland, the famous Newgrange monument, older than Stonehenge and the pyramids, yielded a controversial discovery. A man buried there carried DNA suggesting his parents were first-degree relatives, possibly brother and sister. When this was published in 2020, researchers interpreted it as evidence of a royal dynasty. Incestuous unions, where documented in ancient societies, are often associated with elite families claiming divine status. The pharaohs of Egypt, the god-kings of the Inca Empire. Newgrange, it seemed, had its own god-king. But the story is not that simple. In 2025, Jessica Smith at UCL Dublin published a re-evaluation in Antiquity. The bone in question was not found in an undisturbed burial. It came from disturbed soil, mixed with animal bones and other remains. The tomb had been opened repeatedly by antiquarians over 300 years. The original position of the bone cannot be determined with certainty. No articulated human remains have ever been found in any Irish passage tomb. Cremation and disarticulation were the norm. The idea of a single king buried intact is inconsistent with how these monuments were actually used. The incest case remains isolated. No other similar genetic relationship has been found in Neolithic Ireland or Britain. The interpretation remains debated, but the confident god-king narrative has been seriously challenged. And that pattern, initial certainty giving way to complexity, is exactly what DNA evidence keeps revealing about the Stone Age. So what does this tell us about human society? The Stone Age was not a time of primitive equality. It was a time of experimentation. Different cultures tried different ways of organizing families, inheritance, and power. Some, like the tomb builders of Northern Europe, developed highly structured patrilineal dynasties that lasted for centuries. Male bloodlines controlled monumental architecture. Status was inherited. Women moved between communities to form alliances. The Stone Age was not an age of equality. It was an age of dynasties. Power is inherited. Blood matters. And stone monuments last long enough to prove it. Genetic research on Neolithic populations continues. Each new genome adds detail to the map of ancient social structures. Genealogy tracks the findings as they emerge. Subscribe to follow the evidence.